Elon Musk, dressed in tattered clothes and sporting a rough, unkempt beard, stepped onto a bustling street in Los Angeles, completely unrecognized. In this private social experiment, he called himself Robert, a homeless wanderer armed with only a threadbare backpack, a worn notebook, and a simmering curiosity about how society truly interacts with its most vulnerable members. Within the first few hours, Elon experienced stinging derision. A group of teenagers jeered at his ragged appearance, tossing out jokes that labeled him a troublemaker. In a modest eatery, the owner hesitated to sell him a simple sandwich, suspicious that this disheveled man might be penniless or dangerous. Elon, who in reality commanded countless resources, stood stunned at how a single meal could become a point of shame when wrapped in the cloak of poverty. His usual boardroom battles and social media spats now seemed trivial compared to this raw, on-the-ground dismissal. That evening, he tried to rest under a deserted overpass. The traffic overhead created a ceaseless roar, headlights flaring and fading like distant phantoms. Every rumble of an engine reminded him just how easily the world can speed by, indifferent to those without shelter. Despite all his innovations in technology, he felt powerless against the chill creeping into his bones. On his second day, exhaustion mounted. While slumped on a broken bench, Elon's attention was drawn by a shy voice. "Mister, are you hungry?" He turned to see a boy of about 10, brown hair sticking out from under a too-big cap, offering him a half-eaten sandwich wrapped in a napkin. "My mom says we should share whatever we have," the boy said, a mixture of nerves and kindness in his eyes. Momentarily speechless, Elon, still presenting himself as Robert, accepted the sandwich, moved by the simple humanity. "Thank you. What's your name?" he managed. "I'm Mateo," the boy replied, beaming as though proud of his small act of charity. Over the next few days, their short interactions continued. Mateo revealed that he lived nearby with his mom, Lucia, a hard-working woman juggling multiple jobs. Their home wasn't large, but it was filled with warmth, though Mateo admitted money had been tight since his father left. Elon's heart ached as the boy innocently described how they sometimes skipped small luxuries to keep up with rent. One afternoon, Mateo mentioned his school's long-anticipated digital library that never came to be. "We were supposed to get computers, maybe even a lab for after-school clubs," he said wistfully. "Some famous donor promised it, but the project stopped. My teacher said it was Elon Musk." At the mention of his own name, Elon's chest tightened. He remembered that project. He'd once pledged funds to build digital libraries for underserved schools, only to shelve the plan amid rocket launches and research expansions. Hearing Mateo speak of it so longingly pierced his conscience. This child, who had shared his meager lunch, was inadvertently hurt by Elon's neglect. Meanwhile, every evening, Elon endured the cold reality of homelessness, suspicious stares, dismissive gestures, and the incessant worry about finding a safe place to sleep. The more he witnessed, the more guilt gnawed at him for having pivoted away from smaller, community-driven projects that could have changed lives. Late one night, the sky unleashed a drenching rain. Huddling under a narrow awning, Elon felt the chill seep through his tattered jacket. The street was nearly empty, puddles reflecting neon signs and flickering streetlights. Suddenly, he heard footsteps. Through the sheets of rain came Mateo, clutching a small plastic poncho. "You'll get sick out here," he said, voice trembling with concern. Lucia stood behind him, her brow furrowed with worry. But their kindness was cut short by the brusque arrival of Uncle Hector, Lucia's brother, whose booming voice echoed in the alleyway. "What are you doing?" Hector barked. "You don't know who this man is. We've had enough people trying to take advantage." Despite Hector's harsh stance, Lucia and Mateo refused to abandon Elon to the storm. They handed him the poncho and scurried off, Hector grumbling all the while. In that moment, Elon saw not only genuine compassion, but also a fragile sense of security that could easily be threatened. Clearly, they had reason to be cautious, perhaps from past betrayals or constant financial strain. After nights of fitful sleep and relentless cold, Elon's health began to falter. Realizing the experiment had shown him what he needed to see, he decided it was time to leave life on the streets before illness took a serious toll. Quietly, he slipped into a small storage unit he'd secretly rented. Inside, he changed into clean clothes, shaved off the scraggly beard, and reactivated his phone, which vibrated with days' worth of unanswered messages. Returning to his office, he stunned his staff with a single directive. "Find the files on that school digital library project," he said. "Every philanthropic venture I left hanging, bring it back on my desk. We're restarting them." His colleagues exchanged bewildered glances, but none dared to question the urgency in his voice. The next day, Elon called the number Lucia had given him while he was still Robert. Their meeting took place in a modest cafe on the edge of the neighborhood. When Lucia and Matteo arrived, they searched the room uncertainly until Elon waved them over. No longer in disguise. Lucia's eyes widened. "Robert?" Matteo asked, brow furrowed with confusion. Elon nodded gently. "My real name is Elon. Elon Musk," he explained, taking out an ID to prove it. "I'm sorry I lied. I was living on the streets to understand things firsthand. I never meant to deceive you." Lucia stiffened. "Why us? Why pretend?" Elon spoke quietly, regret tinging his voice. "I funded big ideas but lost sight of people who needed help now. I abandoned a promise to your son's school. Matteo's kindness made me realize that was wrong." Matteo, stunned, looked from his mother to Elon. "So you're the one who was supposed to build our library?" "Yes," Elon answered, his gaze sincere. "And I will. I'm restarting it, and I want to offer you both any support I can. I know you've been juggling jobs, Lucia. Maybe there's a position at one of my partner companies." At first, Lucia hesitated, and Matteo just stared in disbelief. But beneath their caution, there was gratitude. They agreed to explore Elon's offer, yet remained guarded, especially because of Uncle Hector's wariness. Indeed, the friction soon escalated. When Hector learned of Elon's return, he erupted in anger, accusing him of seeking publicity. Tensions at home intensified until, one afternoon, Matteo went missing after a bullying episode at school. Lucia, frantic, called Elon. "He never came home," she sobbed. Elon immediately organized a search. Hours passed as they combed through alleys, playgrounds, and abandoned lots. At last, Elon found Matteo by a decrepit fountain, shivering from both fear and cold. "I'm sorry," Matteo whispered, eyes brimming with tears. "Everyone's fighting over you. Uncle Hector thinks you'll hurt us, and I don't want to be a burden." Elon's heart clenched. He knelt beside the boy. "You're not a burden, Matteo. You're part of why I'm trying to do better. Let's go home." Back at Lucia's small, sparsely furnished home, the reunion was tearful. Lucia pulled Matteo into her arms, murmuring thanks to Elon. Hector stood off to the side, arms crossed, anger mingling with relief. The tension was palpable, but Elon calmly produced a folder detailing the revived digital library initiative and a stable job opportunity for Lucia. "I'm not here to exploit you," he told Hector. "I just want to honor the promise I made to kids like Matteo." Though still skeptical, Hector was forced to admit that Matteo's safety mattered above all. Lucia, her voice shaky but determined, thanked Elon for helping find her son. She agreed to consider the job offer, a chance to leave behind juggling 3 part-time shifts. Matteo, clutching Elon's sleeve, asked quietly, "You won't disappear again, will you?" Elon shook his head. "Not until that library is built and you have the tools you need." In the weeks that followed, the digital library project roared back to life. Trucks delivered new computers, shelves of books, and up-to-date technology. Students buzzed with excitement. Matteo watched as the once-abandoned space turned into a thriving resource center, fulfilling a dream he thought had died. Lucia began training for her new position, a job with benefits that would finally allow her to be home for Matteo's bedtime. Though still guarded, Hector saw tangible improvements, night shifts, more stability, and a noticeable change in Lucia's demeanor. When the official opening of the library arrived, local media turned out in force, curious about Elon Musk's renewed philanthropic push. But Elon's focus stayed on the students who excitedly powered up their new computers. During the brief ceremony, he stood at the podium and said, "We can aim for Mars and new frontiers, but let's not forget the needs right here in our cities. A single sandwich from a caring boy changed my outlook. I hope we pay that kindness forward." Though some critics insisted this was a mere PR stunt, those who had witnessed Elon's days on the street knew better. He had felt firsthand the chill of being overlooked. He'd seen how trust could be fragile in communities burdened by broken promises. Over time, this compassion seeped into his broader ventures, weaving philanthropic goals into cutting-edge innovations. Lucia's new job allowed her to save more and worry less. Matteo, no longer shy about dreaming big, immersed himself in science projects, newly inspired by the technology Elon's funds had provided. Even Hector, resistant as he'd been, acknowledged that Matteo's opportunities had vastly improved. Occasionally, Elon visited the neighborhoods he'd once traversed as Robert. He offered discreet help to some of the individuals he'd met, an out-of-work engineer, a single mother seeking shelter, determined to address their situations before they spiraled deeper into hardship. Each interaction reminded him that, while grand visions matter, everyday struggles can't be ignored. In the end, it was Matteo's small gift of a leftover sandwich that changed the course of Elon's philanthropic engagement. For the boy, it was a natural act of empathy, rooted in his mother's teachings to help others. For Elon, it became a defining moment that turned abstract ideals of charity into personal accountability. At the closing of the library ceremony, Matteo handed Elon a simple drawing, a child giving half a sandwich to a man with a rocket in the background. "Thanks for coming back," he said with a grin. Elon smiled back, eyes misty. "Thank you for making me see what I was missing," he replied. And so, the man famous for launching rockets and shaping the future discovered that sometimes the smallest gestures could move mountains. For Lucia, Matteo, Hector, and even Elon Musk himself, the ripple effect of that single act of kindness forged a bond that no business contract or PR campaign could ever replicate.